The chat if anybody has them. Okay. Okay, cool. So I usually. Oh, I don't know. I usually just like do a whole bunch at a time, and then like I'll release them weekly in a season. I usually don't do a lot of like live podcast. I do some here and there. I have another one scheduled for tomorrow actually, but that's gonna be the last time for a while. I'm taking a little break. I kind of like it that way. Hmm. It's more like I just get burnt out and then I have to like take a break. Yeah. I'm just gonna give it a couple of minutes before we get started. All right, I guess we could get started. All right, hey everybody. How's everybody doing? This is my first stream of the week. I have a guest today. I'm here with Marcel from Event. You said Event.Cruises?
Yeah, Event Cruises.
Okay,
Hey,
cool.
everybody.
So it looks like we have quite a few things to talk about. Marcel was a psychiatrist and then went into
Oh,
a
wait, no, therapist.
therapist. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no
I don't
worries.
know.
It's similar. The psychiatrist has like a PhD. They can prescribe medication, whereas as a therapist,
Okay.
yeah, the best I could do is give advice.
Okay, because I remember we talked about it on the
Hmm.
podcast.
Hmm.
Um, Actually, I do have a command for that podcast, so if people want to listen to it, it was a really good episode. There you go. Oh, thanks
Oh,
for the sub.
awesome.
um, yeah, so where did you want to like jump in? Where did you want to get started?
I mean, we could start whenever. You said you or wherever. You said you wanted to have a conversation on, I guess, gaming health in general,
Gaming
or.
health and just mental health in general. It's Mental Health Awareness Month, so
Mhm.
I've been doing a few streams around mental health. Some of those did include video games and video games as therapy. And I know you
Mhm.
brought up some talking points about addiction and burnout and escapism, and we talked about some of those things. But I'd like to get your opinion on those and all this other interesting stuff you brought up as well.
Yeah, sure. Where would you like to start?
um, Well, actually, since I'm dealing with burnout, can we talk a little bit about burnout?
Yeah, for sure. All right. So I'm going to talk about burnout in two segments
Okay.
from a neurotypical and a neurodivergent standpoint.
Okay.
Okay. So first, I'm going to take a step further back and say neurotypical and neurodivergency, they're less different than we all think. And I think, and that's a very hot take that I'm gonna slowly develop for you guys.
Okay.
So, in terms of burnout, a neurotypical person also experiences burnout, and a neurodivergent person also experiences burnout. The difference that I would state is how long before you feel the burn.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
so I'll give you a great example. So let's say that a neurotypical person grabs a hot skillet.
Okay.
When they grab the skillet, it might take them a second to realize, oh, this is very hot, it's burning my hand, and they will pull their hand off. Maybe they'll get first degree burns, it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a neurodivergent person may take 2 seconds to realize the skillet is burning them, and that would then create second degree burns.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like a noticing, and there's a pro that comes with it, right? If you
Yeah.
don't notice the burnout, you get to do more with it. It's kind of like you take more damage, but you can also tank a little better,
Okay.
and in terms of like a gaming
Mm-hmm.
standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah. That
And
makes sense.
and so I have ADHD, and we spoke about this right before the podcast, where we do heavy sprints and just diving into our work, get a week's worth done in 3 days, but those last 2 days are kind of like the resting period before the sprint starts again.
Okay.
And I find that works best for me, and that's why you tend to see a lot of people. And I'm going on a tangent. Please stop me.
It's
I
okay.
leave it.
I'm gonna let you
Um,
go.
okay, and you end up seeing a lot of people in like the software development field that are neurodivergent because their deliverables are on a weekly basis.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're judged on Friday end of day. Hey, were you able to do everything by Friday end of day? And if they finish it all Monday because they worked for 20 hours straight, everyone in the company's happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that having alternative work methods would benefit, from a mental health standpoint, all the types of people that exist on Earth, I guess.
So is that
And
an okay kind of like work ethic to have?
it depends on the field, right? Like
Okay.
if you're a hotel clerk, you probably can't do that,
Right.
just because of how management works. However,
Mm-hmm.
um, you technically can, right? If you really do think about it. So let's say that you have a hotel manager that is flexible with their employees, and the employee says, "Hey, I only want to work 2 days. Can I have two 20-hour shifts for my 40-hour full-time work?" They'll
Okay.
work Monday and they'll work Friday, and then that's it for 20 hours. And if they personally resonate with that, I think that they should be allowed to do so.
Mm.
Now, we don't allow that as a nation because it can get abused because the person empowers the manager, obviously.
Yeah.
But that's something that I would personally prefer.
Yeah. I mean,
In term, yeah.
it sounds a lot more flexible and it
Mm-hmm.
caters to people's individuality because
Mm-hmm.
everybody's different, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
100%.
yeah.
But I guess we'll go back to the topic at hand in terms of burnout. Um, I'm gonna list a or I'm gonna state a coping mechanism for burnout, and then I'll suggest a treatment for burnout.
Okay.
I think that's a good way to go about
Yeah.
it. So, in terms of coping with burnout, and then this is something that I do, unfortunately, and and obviously we're not perfect, and you don't have to fix every single flaw immediately, right?
Yeah.
But one of my coping mechanisms for burnout is alternate dopamine intake. So,
Okay.
like specifically, if I had a hard day at work, I might get home and be like, well, I don't want to put effort into my dopamine intake. Let me define dopamine intake.
Okay.
Intake is anything that's entertaining to you. So, um, sorry for the tangent.
Oh, no, no,
So,
it's okay.
so let's say that you are cooking because you want a tasty meal. That
Hmm.
is a high amount of input that you're putting in to intake the dopamine of the meal that you're enjoying, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And so cooking is a healthy form of dopamine intake. The more effort you have to put in to receive dopamine, the healthier it is. Oppositely, um, if you are scrolling through TikTok, it's free dopamine. You're putting in zero effort to intake that dopamine. I'm guilty of this. I'll open up my TikTok and I'll just go through my memes, or whatever, train the algorithm to make me put in less effort towards intaking my dopamine.
Okay.
We all deserve a little treat every now and then, but it's definitely a coping mechanism for burnout, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah. It doesn't do any damage in the short term, but it definitely creates that level of dopamine addiction, is what I call it, or it's low effort dopamine addiction because high effort dopamine addiction is safe,
Okay.
right? Where so high effort is cooking, for example.
Mm-hmm.
High effort could be um, exercising, right? For like the high that you get or the sense of accomplishment of an exercise, that was a
Yeah.
lot of effort,
Yeah, that makes
right?
sense. Yeah.
And so we'll go towards the treatment, right? The treatment that I would do is tag on the low effort onto the high effort. So, for example, I can only go through TikTok after I've cooked myself a healthy meal. And
Okay.
so what happened is you had a high effort dopamine intake and you just tagged on the low effort for, as a dessert, so to speak.
That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, I feel like for me, it's a bit hard with social media because I feel like it kind of drains me. It's like the
Hmm.
opposite.
It would you say that it drains you like as a post effort? Like at the end of it, do you feel drained, would you say?
Yeah, so like usually like when I stream or like I'm hanging out in discords or I'm like interacting with people. Um,
Hmm.
it like at the time I feel fine. I'll go
Yeah.
into people's chats, watch their stream, be really talkative. But like towards the like afterward, like that's when I'm drained. You
Hmm.
know.
Would you use the word drain as like a positive or a negative thing?
Oh, a negative. Like I don't want to do
Oh,
anything after. I'm like just like a zombie.
so hmm. Okay, so I'm gonna drill into this a little more if that's okay.
Oh yeah, that's fine.
So the drained feeling, would you say that there's more shame attached or more like post work effort attached?
Um,
Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Because I like sometimes I feel like it's hard to define like
Hmm.
what
Hmm.
is a part of streaming and then what's your personal life.
Yeah,
And
I hear
that's
that.
yeah, and that's the hard part is like creating those boundaries and knowing like what's work, what's not work, like what do I consider work?
Hmm.
Because like I have a whole bunch of cool people I hang out with. They're a lot of fun, but at the
Hmm.
same time, it's partially work too. If
Hmm.
that makes
I think the
sense.
lines are super blurred
Yeah,
with
yeah.
content creation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. Um, So, one of the things that when I was a practicing therapist, almost almost 8 years ago, by the way,
Oh wow, okay.
I stopped practicing seven. I did it only for a year, so I'm tattling on myself here. Yeah, I'm not using my degree, which is fine. If you guys aren't using degree, I'm just letting that out there. I'm one of you guys, and I'm happy and well out
Yep,
of it.
same here. Same here.
Glad to hear that. Um, I distracted myself. So,
It's okay.
in in terms of blurred lines, and there's a lot of I call it the child's voice, which is like your inner self that picked up these values that conflict with your day to day.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I picked up as a kid was the concept of being genuine. And so my adult self is doing what he has to do, surviving this capitalist world we live in. And sometimes when I'm exhausted and my adult self isn't present, my child self knocks on the door and says, "Hey, you weren't genuine today," and that hurts. And I'm like, "Oh,
Oh yeah, that's
was I not genuine in a way that I'm ashamed of, or was I not genuine in a way that is acceptable? You know what I mean?"
yeah.
And
Yeah.
that kind of introspection has helped me become a happier person, where I kind of negotiate with the inner self that decides, which one or what the parameters are for behavior I can happily go to sleep with.
Oh, I just want to grab something.
I like the portal, by the way.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that actually, about the inner child and your authentic self, because I've been getting into that a lot with my therapist.
Ooh, okay. So your therapist is probably a master's degree, so I'm gonna say that this is just friendly advice as
Okay,
someone with a bachelor's degree
okay,
that is legally.
okay,
Yeah,
okay. That's fine. It's just like the whole idea of like,
sure.
your inner child and
hmm
all that stuff. It's kind of like new to me.
hmm hmm
So
It's
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So what is this podcast rated?
Oh, you can say what. Well, not whatever you want. Whatever won't get me banned from Twitch.
Okay, okay. That's
Whatever won't get me banned.
this should be fine. Just interrupt me if I go into territory that is in TOS. All right.
Okay.
So, um, within the last 5 years, 6 years, I started experimenting with psychedelics,
Okay.
and uh, I experimented with them in terms of, or in the sphere of trying to use it as medicine.
Mhm.
And I'm not recommending psychedelics, but I'm
Mhm.
going to state what they did for me.
Okay.
So, the best way I would describe psychedelics, and I didn't see any gnomes. I didn't see God talking to me. None of that nature. Everything was a little brighter. Everything was a little more colorful, and nature looked like it was breathing. Just like very, very like basic level hallucination, right? Where you could.
Yeah.
I'm getting an ad now. I don't know if I should stop for the stream.
Oh, you can keep talking. Like they can.
Okay,
Like some people. I mean, some people are
hey,
gonna miss out, but that's
fine with
okay.
me. Um, so ad distracted me from my thoughts. Okay,
I'm
yeah.
sorry. I'm
So
sorry about that.
no worries. The best way I would describe it would be it expedited my journey to self acceptance and enlightenment. It
Okay.
didn't do anything for me that I wouldn't have figured out eventually,
Yeah.
but I would say, without a shadow of a doubt, it sped up my maturity 5 to 10 years.
Okay.
Um, I and again, I'm not recommending dosage or timing, but now do it once a year,
Okay.
and it's helped me. And I have a pretty big ego, as we spoke about previously, and
Yeah.
I think that the ego, healthy or not, the human condition, it stops you from digging too deep into yourself too fast, is what I would say.
I agree with
And
that.
that lets you do it very, very quickly,
Hmm.
whether you're ready for it or not.
Yeah.
Very fortunately, I was ready for it. And so I benefited from that transaction. So all of this going back to the child self, even though I think it's the best way to describe it, I feel as though it it almost downplays how intelligent that person is by calling them a child. Does that make sense?
I can see your
I
point, but I
Mhm,
I can also, because I feel like there's still a lot of childlike
mhm,
aspects to my
mhm,
life and a lot of people,
mhm.
like especially gamers in general, because
I
like
agree.
we just need a lot of imagination to like be able to
Mhm,
like put ourselves in these different worlds, which
mhm.
I guess another topic we're going to talk about is escapism, and I think that would be
Yeah.
a good thing to bring up. Um, but yeah, like I just feel like when people talk about your inner child, it's like
Mhm,
your most authentic self, right?
mhm,
It's just you being innocent at like the very base, like without any
mhm.
influences and or
Yeah.
anything. It's just who you are.
Yeah, I can agree with that. The reason that I struggle to call it the child self is I feel as though when I'm like communicating the message or the information of like the child self,
Yeah.
the implication of child is kind of like, oh, they don't know what's going on, right? And like
I guess I can
if
see
you're
that.
Mhm. When like whenever you've talked to a kid, they're extremely aware. They're painfully aware, you could
Mm-hmm.
even say. Um, but and it's funny, and I talk about this a lot when talking about mental health with friends, and I can vividly remember uh, being smarter at 11 years old than 12 years old.
Really? What happened?
And hormones.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
I,
I
I,
guess that
I,
makes
I
sense.
and obviously I eventually surpassed them both, right? But um, I can vividly remember having clarity of thought when I was 11, and the only thing that like would cloud my mind was like having too much energy in my body, which is a whole nother problem with like little boys that I feel like we don't address enough as a society.
Yeah.
Um, but I remember like hormones coming into my system and removing my clarity,
Mm.
and I think that even guys going into I'm 32, and
Okay.
guys from 25 to maybe 40 until like our testosterone really starts dipping can suffer from that lack of clarity because of our hormones, and like being unaware of it kind of doesn't like it's the fog that you don't know is there.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
I feel like being like becoming a teenager is really difficult. It's really difficult
yeah.
because you know your views are changing. You're trying to figure things out, and your
Hmm.
body's changing, and it's a lot to deal with, especially if you don't
Hmm.
have any guidance.
Hmm. um, and I can't speak from like the female perspective, right? But
Hmm.
I am aware of like the culture shock of when you discover as a woman, or when you're a 12, 13-year-old teenager female, that invisible PvP exists.
What's that?
So it's a term that I use. You
Okay.
probably have a better term for it. So
Okay.
invisible PvP, from what I've observed, is like the girl teenager's weapon of choice.
Okay.
Like the concept of not inviting somebody to a sleepover,
Hmm.
or not inviting someone to your clique, or ostracization through non-inclusion.
Okay.
Whether it's laughing less at their jokes, laughing louder when someone else says their jokes. Does that make sense? Am I?
Yeah, no,
If you, yeah.
that does make sense. Is it only girls that do that though? Do
Um,
guys do it too?
I think guys do it as well, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
I don't think it's the same frequency. I think at that age, visible PvP happens much more often
Okay.
from a male perspective, where they're literally punching each other in the head, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's easier, and that's another I'm going to use the word social wound, because trauma is a very strong word. It's a social wound that I think that women start to carry as they grow older and have to heal from not knowing where the lines in the sand are in terms of like enemies, friends, frenemies, etc.
Yeah.
Whereas with males, due to our less practiced social skills, it's very overt. You generally know who your ally is, or who your ally isn't, so to speak.
Yeah. I don't know, like that happened to me in like
Mhm.
second grade, and then like I just
Oh.
isolated myself from people from then on
Hmm.
until like well after college. Well, I mean, I started making friends in college. It was a little
Hmm.
different then, but yeah. So that happened a little early for me, and it caused me a lot of social anxiety. But yeah, I know what that's like.
For sure, and like the first and second grade's insane, by the way. And so I'm sure the
Yeah,
first time you encountered it, you're like, wait, why does this exist? Like it's
yeah.
insane as a
Mm.
concept. And but yeah, my condolences for that.
Oh, thank you. I'm working through it now, but yeah, it's weird because like my mom was kind of a bully at home, and she
Hmm. Hmm.
isolated us from people,
Yeah.
and then I had a bully at school, and I isolated myself from everybody else. So it was pretty lonely for a little while, you know?
Yeah, yeah, and I think I think we can lead into your next subject of escapism
Oh yeah,
through
yeah.
that, right?
Hmm.
When you've isolated yourself and you have no really other outlet. What was your I guess escapism of choice?
Oh, for me, it was definitely video games. I mean, I think that's why I'm such a big gamer because it was like,
Hmm.
you know, when nobody else was there, games were always there, you know,
Hmm.
and I could always go someplace else and be somebody else for a little while.
Hmm. Did
Um,
you have a genre of preference?
it became RPGs after a while
Hmm.
because I know Final Fantasy was my first RPG, Final Fantasy VII, and once that happened, I was really into them. But I used to play a little bit of everything.
Okay.
Yeah. But I felt like RPGs allowed like the most escape, you know?
Hmm. No submersion.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Um, so from an escapism standpoint, um, I'm gonna call it a coping mechanism for
Mm-hmm.
the purpose of this conversation.
Oh, it makes sense.
And I think that there's a negative stigma with coping mechanisms, and that you shouldn't have or use coping mechanisms.
I mean, I
And
don't know how you would live without them.
exactly right. Like
Yeah.
I think that life is an amalgamation of coping mechanisms and then post-traumatic healing.
Yeah.
Especially because like power dynamics are crazy when you're a kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
When your parent isn't on your team, when your friends, when you don't have a team in your friend group, when you don't have a mentor, I find that anyone who doesn't have a mentor figure growing up into adulthood starts developing and this is a tangent, I'd apologize for that again.
Oh, it's okay. Don't worry about it.
And I found this especially myself, starts developing like a disdain for authority.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost see that as like a coping mechanism for not having a mentor on the
Yeah.
way up to wherever you got. If you got to where you got without a mentor or even close to it, you develop that sort of disdain. And going tying this all to escapism, a lot of video games, I feel, um, all the mentors are usually forcibly removed from your life, whether it's like the sword master that taught you or your parents or whatever it might be. The orphan protagonist is a very popular trope for a reason, I think.
Yeah. So could your mentor end up being your anxiety? Is that like a thing?
I would say a mentor has to be a separate entity,
Okay.
but you can be self-taught,
Okay.
right? If
Yeah.
you bootstrapped yourself, whatever energy source you used, whether it was anxiety, anger, hope, whichever combination of those two that you used, it was just you. And if separating yourself from that emotion is healthy and calling that your mentor, I say go for it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, that's what I want to hyper focus on in terms of like what is a mentor, what isn't.
Okay. Yeah, because I feel like I lived with anxiety a long time and I just figured out that my anxiety is from trying not to be my mom.
Oof, yeah.
And it's like, oh, that's great.
Mhm.
um,
Do you,
yeah.
do you end up finding that there's some behaviors that are good from her, but you avoid just from that comparison standpoint? Because no one's 100% wrong, right?
Yeah, that's true. She was a really strong person and she could
Hmm.
stand up for herself. And like,
Hmm.
I can't. Like, I'm very, like,
Hmm.
timid and I don't like confrontations. So I would say that's the only good thing about her, but kind of she
Hmm.
like takes it too extreme. She's like too confrontational and stuff like that.
Hmm. For sure. And it's one of those like unfortunate situations where hurt people,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
My parents were immigrants, and I felt that through how they raised me. you, you know, and it's fine for me to laugh about it now, but it was something
Yeah.
uh, on the way up.
Yeah, I mean, I bet. Jeez.
Yeah. But going back to the escapism conversation, I would say that even though escapism falls under the coping mechanisms,
Mhm.
and it depends on what your escapism is, right?
Okay.
Um, the escapism. I'll go back to the conversation we had on, or we had earlier on dopamine intake. The more, and this is a hot take, the more intricate or difficult a game is to you, the healthier escapism I would say it is.
Really?
Uh, and it's still a coping mechanism at the end of the day. It's not a treatment for whatever's going on around you.
Mhm.
But uh, the harder it is to catch the carrot that dopamine is holding over you, the less addictive it is. Um, I'll give a wild out of left field example for the nerds out there. Um, do you know the game Vampire Survivors?
No, I've never heard of that.
Okay, let me go to another game. I got a cookie clicker.
Cookie Clicker?
Yeah,
Like those mobile games?
like yeah, those idle clicky games.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Those are the worst mental health games to ever be developed.
yeah. Yeah, they're so
Straight out.
easy. Yeah.
And if you feel great, I feel great. I know the trick, and I feel great when I play them.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I'm eating a honey bun. I'm mentally eating a honey bun right now with this. And um, to me, that's all the reward of accomplishment with none of the effort. And you see people spiral into these like gotcha games. Gambling is a whole other thing. I'm not gonna jump into that's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah.
Sorry, MS Warlord, I did not bring honey buns, but if you go on cookieclicker.com, you can get the equivalent.
I was just gonna read what MS Warlord said. He said, "My mother was a violent schizophrenic. Me and my brother and sister moved out before the age of 16. Been on our own ever since. Oh, that just scrolled up. No. It's been a slice, we sink or swim. That had to be hard."
Yeah, it's very difficult, man. I hope that you've healed from that.
Mm-hmm.
Oof.
Yeah.
In terms, oh, so actually, while we're talking about escapism,
Yeah.
here's something that's interesting.
Okay.
In in the conversation or in the list that I gave you, I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna continuously go back to it. There was something I mentioned called EMDR, eye
Oh,
movement desensitization.
yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. I wasn't too sure what it meant, and I didn't look it up just so you could explain it to me.
Oh, awesome. Okay, so I'm gonna get a live take.
Yeah.
So this is very close to hypnotism, which you can argue whether hypnotism is real or not, but the science states that eye movement desensitization and reprocessing is real. So, what is it? Um,
Yeah.
it's such it's a strange phenomenon where your eye moving in a pattern, following an object, while discussing things that bothered you or internal or mental wounds that you sustained, help them heal faster. There are neural connections that get made while this is happening. The brain seeks patterns. Whatever the science is, I don't have a PhD.
Yeah.
It genuinely helps people. So, because of the existence of EMDR, the uh, game therapy has tried to surface as like a treatment option where
Mm-hmm.
a therapist or I wouldn't even want to call him a therapist. I want to call him an advice giver. Talks to
Okay.
you while you're playing usually a comfy cozy game.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I love those.
I'm I'm gonna give you guys a really hot take. I think it's
You have so
extremely.
many.
I do. Yeah, I'm on a podcast without a face, so I'm just gonna let it rock. Um, I think it's extremely predatory. I think that.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
yeah. I
I'm
agree.
glad
I
we're on the
agree.
same
Yeah, I
side.
agree with that. It's
Um,
hard though.
it,
Those are addictive.
yeah,
They're
yeah.
so addictive. Yeah.
You know, the concept of playing Stardew Valley while someone in a calm voice talks to you through whatever you're going through is it sounds
Yeah.
great
Yeah, it's
on paper,
amazing.
but they're usually not qualified to do what they're doing. At best, they have a bachelor's degree like I do.
Hmm.
Not to say that I'm not qualified. My ego says that I am, but I understand that it's not a one size fits all, and Stardew Valley in itself is too distracting, in my opinion, and you won't get the bang for your buck because therapy's expensive. And if you're worried about, your pixel cows not having enough pixel wheat, you might not get what you need out of that session, and you might just be going back using a coping mechanism or escapism for your problem rather than a treatment.
Yeah.
Um,
It
but
feels
yeah, like
like.
oh
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, yeah, you go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, it feels like it's it is good to kind of like have some sort of escape.
Sure.
Because even like with my anxiety, it's nonstop, and it's
Mhm,
hard because it interrupts my sleep sometimes. Like I'll get up to go to
mhm,
the bathroom, and my brain is on. Like I
mhm.
can't go back to sleep.
Yeah.
So I feel like, having those kind of games where you can like let your mind go numb, or like,
Hmm. Hmm.
doing something that kind of takes you out of that element for a little bit to kind of take the edge off. Like I feel
Yeah.
like you
Yeah.
kind of need that. Otherwise,
Yes.
it's kind of like going on a diet, like going all in, and then you're
Hmm.
setting yourself up for failure because it's hard to build a lifelong habit like that.
Oh, I agree. So let's go. Let's talk about that actually.
Okay.
So what you're saying is letting your brain go numb. Can
Hmm.
I can I sell you the idea of redescribing it as having your brain in the flow state?
Okay. Yeah, I like that.
So, and but
It sounds better.
yeah, yeah. But oppositely, if you had like a therapist person talking to you while you're doing it, they would be interrupting your flow state,
Yeah, that's
right?
true. Yeah.
And so, and tell me if I'm wrong. When you're in the flow state, what's your game of choice?
Oh, Graveyard Keeper.
That's a good game.
Oh, it's so fun.
That's a good game. And
It's so fun.
so
Yeah.
when you're playing Graveyard Keeper in the
Mhm.
flow state, you're able to focus at the task at hand while also planning out the next thing you're going to do,
Mhm.
right? It's like a
Yeah.
conversation with yourself without words.
Okay.
And so I wouldn't call it your brain going numb. I think brain going numb is that state of you're staring at the wall because you talked to so many people today, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah.
the flow state is definitely a healing mode that you're adopting. So I
Okay.
would give you the green light on that.
Okay.
Flow states are great. That's why people who play sports have great mental health usually. People who do a competitive thing generally have great mental health, even if it's something as silly as like Rocket League ranked, right? You're nothing else is. I don't play Rocket League, but nothing else is in your mind while you're trying to make your car flip and flap and knock the soccer ball into the opponent's goal.
I
So,
I don't know.
uh,
Like I feel like the
mhm,
opposite is true in Tekken. Like there's just so much toxicity and stuff. Like the whole
mhm.
FGC. Like I just
Oh,
feel like it like that for some reason. And there's a lot of anger, and
mhm.
I don't know where it comes from. I don't know if people are just hurt and they're trying to get through this game. But then like it was kind of like you were talking about before. It's a hard game to like master.
Mhm, mhm.
And
I
people probably
mhm.
get that dopamine from making accomplishments.
For sure. I think that oh God, the FGC, we would need a whole podcast episode to talk
Oh,
about
we
the
should
FGC.
we should do one.
Okay, yeah, put it on the calendar.
Okay, I'll write you down. I'll write you in.
Uh, but briefly, I agree with you. I think the issue with the FGC league, uh, maybe Super Smash Bros. I think they're getting a little better, but they can still get critiqued. Um, they, I don't know if the accomplishment is what gets them to dopamine,
Yeah.
or embarrassing somebody else or obliterating them. It almost feels
Mm.
like I get my dopamine from you losing yours type of behavior.
Yeah, that's so weird. Is there anything else where that happens that you can just think of off the top of your head? Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the
No, no,
spot.
that's fine. You know what it is? I think that it's combat. I think that like uh, for combat games, all it takes is maybe shooters sometimes. I think that they're good at self-regulating.
Yeah.
Um, but in shooters, you can you Fortnite, because I saw someone write Fortnite in the chat earlier.
Yeah, yeah, that's Claire. She plays Fortnite.
In Fortnite, you can beat somebody that's better than you, whether they were looking the wrong way or you had a better weapon. With fighting games, there's only one truth. It's you and that other person, and whoever's more awake and practice more combos is the one that wins.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely about how much you know.
Hmm. And all it takes is honestly when you were learning it was someone mean to you, and that just attaches, and not for everybody, right?
Hmm.
But you can say that like 80% of people who were toxically trained, so to speak, exhibit that when they go to a competition. Here's an example. I used to play Smash Bros competitively,
Oh, okay.
and I stepped out of a tournament because of the words. So not even my opponent, but the words that someone that was in the front row of the crowd said while I was playing. Words that I don't want to repeat here.
Okay, they were
but
that bad. Oh my
there were
goodness.
SA words,
Mm. Oh,
and yeah, yeah, and so
I'm
I'm
so
like,
sorry.
no, I'm not, I'm fine, right? But hearing that throughout my match, I'm like, you know what, this is not something I want to hear. I have no history with it or anything like that. I'm fine, but I'm genuinely just here to compete and have a good time, and anything that gets in the way with that, I just don't want to partake anymore.
Yeah. I mean, that's how it should be. I just feel like people bring their issues into it and kind of misdirect it into the game. And it's
Hmm.
like, bro, like take care of your stuff and your issues instead of putting it on everybody else. We're just trying to play a game here, you know?
Hmm. I think that this is you kind of mentioned something about boys, and when I said they do invisible PvP,
Yeah.
I think that male dominated spaces, and no shade to you guys, majority of my friend groups are male dominated spaces, but whenever I jump to another one and I find that it's like filled with anime profile pictures, probably
Hmm.
some of the most aggressive people I've ever met, just
Really?
grotesque language, and it's usually Discord servers, right?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
most previously cursed servers, or whatever it might be, or like 4chan, for example. It's grotesqueness for the purpose of, I'm gonna use the word, social currency.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that. I can
And
see that.
so without moderation of a societally sane force, which is unfortunately usually women, right? Like,
Hmm.
after, I'm gonna say after 20 years old, women are usually sane, and it usually takes men until like 35, and like that's why you end up seeing like a lot of like age gap relationships, right?
Mm, yeah.
Just because there's a lot of, it takes us a while, which is fine, it is what it
Hmm.
is.
Yeah.
um and so I would argue that, and I don't know if you've noticed this, but when a woman enters one of those male dominated spaces, they either get treated extremely poorly, or the grotesqueness drops significantly.
Yeah.
Not completely, but in a way that I think makes them more capable once they leave that social group, right? They don't go to sports outside to watch a sport event, and they don't say that guy, SA, whatever it might be, in a public forum, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if they're stuck in those spaces, they start normalizing that kind of behavior in posts, right? Like the keyboard warrior type of situation. Speak for
Yeah.
yourself. AMS Warlord, like not all of us can be enlightened. I hear you, man. Full respect. Definitely speaking for myself on this one.
Yeah. I mean, I've been at some like competitions and the people are cool.
Hmm.
Um, I think that's one thing I was really afraid of when I first started getting into Tekken and getting into competitions and stuff. It's
Hmm.
just like how confrontational were people gonna be when I just want to play a game and get good at it, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
100%.
but so far I've been lucky. Um, I need to knock on wood somewhere. But yeah, hopefully that'll continue. But I just don't know. I don't know why. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah, and I think it's one of like, so I think it's an exaggeration of male. I'm not gonna use the word male hubris, but like male growth interactions. So,
Hmm.
for example, um, a lot of the advice that I unfortunately give to like the younger men in my social group is, you're gonna have to be tough, unfortunately. Whatever life throws at you, whatever you want to deal with, it's probably gonna be alone. I'll
Yeah.
talk to you about it. I'll assist you in whatever way, but the majority of people won't want to deal with that, or won't assist you, or the story of the protagonist who makes it alone is so dominated in male spaces that it's almost embarrassing to have had help on the way up, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you'll either deny the help just because that's what you've conditioned yourself, that's what your inner child is demanding of you,
Mhm.
or it won't be there when you reach your hand out and you'll be shamed for it.
Yeah.
And so, circling back that to the male dominated community, which is the fighting game community, um, it's almost as if it's a masquerade of I'm here to elevate myself, but also I'm not going to be kind to you because no one else will be. Get good. That's the kindest thing they could tell you, right? Get good.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't call it kind from a normal sane point of view, but
Mhm.
in that community, I could see it explained that way.
Yeah. I guess. I mean,
It's not an excuse, right?
yeah, no, it's not an excuse. It just
Yeah.
it feels like there are communities out there that are geared
Mm.
towards like keeping that toxicity out. And I
Hmm.
feel like people like that are more open to making friends and like
Hmm. Hmm.
talking about issues they're having instead of
Hmm.
making themselves seem bigger
Yeah,
because they
yeah.
can't deal with whatever they've been through.
Hmm. Yeah, like their escapism, right? When,
Yeah,
when I'm
yeah,
make,
yeah.
when I'm making these assumptions,
Hmm.
I'm going to clarify. It's like an 80-20 rule. So the
I
assumption's
see.
only for like 80% of that group. I'm
Oh,
sure
okay.
20% are great, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but yeah, I agree. There's like specifically like healthy fighting gamers or positive mindset Fortnite players or whatever it might, and you can find those,
Yeah.
right? But it's a shame that that needs to be like in their nomenclature in order for it to be a safe space.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, do you think there's a way of changing that? Is it something about when you grow up, you just learn how to be this way and you don't know any other way? Like, I don't know how that happens.
I think that the introduction of women into these spaces has significantly reduced the levels of toxicity. I would argue that League before, now you play 10 games of League, you're probably playing with a girl,
Mm,
right? Whereas 10 years ago, I think League came out in 2009. 10 years ago, a girl plays League, you're like, whoa, that's crazy.
yeah.
And so the introduction of like women into these spaces has significantly lowered it. I think that we're all still suffering from, I call it the Xbox Live epidemic of
Oh,
like when Xbox Live was like primarily like it was the only voice chat system used where you could play with strangers.
yeah, that's right.
And that was probably the worst things to ever come out of a human's mouth I've heard on the Xbox Live.
I heard it used to be pretty bad. It was
Yeah,
pretty bad. Yeah.
there was no moderation.
Mm,
And so you can imagine what a space turns into where you're just constantly talking to people you'll never see again.
yeah.
And and yeah, so I think that once this new generation of, I'm gonna call them iPad kids or Gen Alpha or
Okay.
even Gen Z, who maybe they got the tail end of the Xbox Live era. There's still Xbox Live, but now it's more moderated and easy to ban. But I think that they're going to usher in a healthier interaction. And public shaming has become popular, so
Yeah.
I think that it's great for keeping that kind of behavior as far as possible from the majority of gamers.
Yeah. What were we gonna talk about next?
Yeah, I didn't have a segue for that one.
It's okay. Um, when you said social connections, what did you mean by that?
Yeah, so I think that we're in an era where games are, well, I'm gonna say before during the COVID era,
Okay.
because now like live service games are being released with the purpose of just trying to drain your wallet rather than create human connection, right? Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't name a game that's encouraged humans to interact with one another for, for the past 4 years that have been released, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But during the COVID era, which is only like 2 years out of it, right? 2022 is when COVID was kind of toning down. Um,
Yeah. So weird.
people really created connections that they start to meet in real life from those games that they played together,
Hmm.
whether they met on Xbox Live, Sony. I don't know what their live service is called, um, or Discord or any MMO really.
Yeah.
These connections, they're as real as the ones that you have in your day to day.
Mhm.
And I think that um, 10 years ago, 2014, I just graduated college. You had your online friends, and then you had your IRL friends. And I
Yeah.
think those lines really started blurring during the COVID era, where your IRL friends became your online friends. And once it ended, you felt the same about both of them, right? You
Okay.
spent that
Yeah.
kind of time. Text became very contextual, where you didn't need to add a lull at the end of your sentence or an emoji, where you just understood how they were saying it, so to speak. With
Okay.
like curse and Discord and like conversations like you and I are having,
Mhm.
right? This is significantly uh, more, I'm gonna use the word intense, than just having a text chat over a chat room or a Facebook Messenger or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And I think that games help solidify that connection. Whereas you can't go to Wendy's, or you can't go to Denny's, I should say, with an online friend, but you can play a couple games of Fortnite with them. And humans bond over activities.
Yeah.
And
S-
so yeah.
So how do you think that's like shaped how friendships are made today?
Oh,
I'm sorry.
no, no, that's fine. I think for gamers, right? Friendships today for gamers,
Yeah.
right? Is that the
Yeah, yeah.
sort of reason? Yeah. Um, I would say that depending on your social group, right? Let's use the word healthy gamers, because there's a slew of unhealthy gamers that form these connections and have social hierarchies based off. Or I guess we could talk about both. I'll talk about
Yeah.
the unhealthy
Okay.
one so we can end in a positive note.
Okay.
So for unhealthy gamers, I think that there's an interesting facet where your social hierarchy starts being dictated by how good you are at the community game.
Mhm.
So what you end up seeing often is, let's say, a group of people play League of Legends, and if you're really astute, you'll start seeing how some of the diamond players might talk over some of the bronze or silver players during a conversation, or just really weird hierarchical interactions that manifest that way. Or maybe when they go on Discord, more people jump into the voice chat, whereas when the bronze players, they might either be considered less funny, even though they might have more of a sense of humor, or other attributes that don't pertain to the game, that aren't as celebrated.
Yeah.
That normally, let's say someone's very inclusive, that's great in a real friend, but when your community is centered around league, it's not an important attribute in your
Mhm.
behavior.
Yeah. Yeah, I
And
feel
mhm,
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just gonna relate that to Tekken too. Like, I feel like, a lot of people use rank as a
mhm,
way to kind of show off. Like,
mhm.
it's not just like how good you are. It's like, you're a better person because of it.
Yeah.
It's a bit like elevated to a point. But a few of us have talked about like how rank is just a tool to
Mhm,
kind of see where you're at. Um, because
mhm,
like every game's different that you play online on a server, but like when you're playing in a competition in real life, I mean,
mhm,
you that's how the game's meant to be played. And you have the person right there next to you. I don't
mhm.
know, it's something different.
It's a different energy, but
Yeah.
even if you're you're better in all the assets or aspects, you're not a better person, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
just
exactly. Exactly.
like, you're still just another person. And I I think it's a human condition,
Yeah.
unfortunately, where you actively have to work against that. Like, when we were in the Unga Bunga times, the best hunter was more important, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they were more valuable, whereas the person who knows more combos, not as valuable, right?
Yeah.
To the group. Um, Unless obviously unless they're using their, I don't know, their tournament money to buy a house so everyone can play in, or something crazy, right?
Yeah.
Then maybe they're the better person. But until then, we're all just people enjoying a hobby together, and there's going to be varied levels of that, right?
Yeah.
Someone has kids, they're probably not gonna have enough time to put into the game as like the 19-year-old who's taking a year between high school and college,
Mhm.
right? And I've observed that in a lot of communities that I was a part of, because I would consider myself a sweaty gamer, where I try
Yeah.
to be as good as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But it it sours me when I witness that in the community.
Yeah.
Where yeah, but oppositely, for healthy gamers, I find that mentorship from the better players becomes a common thing. Where a person that's diamond might say, "Hey, I noticed I was watching your games because they're willing to watch the games of the lesser experienced players. Maybe you should do anti-airs more often, or whatever
Mm-hmm.
it is for the game of choice." And I think willingness to step up as a mentor, or even just keeping quiet. Maybe someone doesn't like being backseat gamed, and you, as a better player, you notice those things, but you have the social awareness to recognize that, right? It's kind of like that power comes with responsibility type of situation.
Yeah.
But that's a little more rare, and I don't try to ask that from anybody, but it's very nice when you get to see it.
So, what are the signs that you might be a toxic gamer, just in case there's somebody out there wondering?
Okay, so I'm gonna preface with there's varying levels of toxicity,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah,
I'm gonna
that's true.
I'm gonna state the obvious ones, and then I'm gonna state the ones that yeah they're kind of toxic, and if you remove them, you'll probably be a happier person at
Mm-hmm.
the end. Um, Obviously, if you tell someone that they're bad at a game, that's pretty toxic. If there's no benefit in saying you are bad, right? Um, Either if you're trying to take them down a notch, you're probably better off leaving that community, or I call it holding hot coals.
Yeah,
Where if you're gonna hit someone with a hot coal, you're gonna do some damage to yourself on the way there,
yeah.
and the damage isn't apparent. You're not going to you know, spontaneously combust from holding a hot coal. But maybe one day your partner might be washing the dishes less than optimally, and you might say, "You suck at washing dishes," and they're like, "Wait, I was just doing something nice for you. Why would you do this to me?"
Yeah,
And these are very human behaviors that are extremely hard to undo, and
yeah.
either like years of introspection and/or therapy are required to undo these things. But pointing out those negative things, right?
Yeah.
Something that can or may or may not be. This is like I'm going to link this to a something that is a little more difficult to observe. Friendly advice, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're hoping to be as an enlightened person as possible and cause as much good as possible, you should always ask yourself, does this person want advice right now before you hand it out? If you can't
That's.
discern,
Oh, I was gonna say that's a good point.
it's hard.
Yeah,
I still do it, right? But I catch myself more often
yeah.
every time.
See, I
Trying.
usually try to balance with something good and something bad, like, and I try not
Mhm.
to make it too bad. It's like, oh, you were awesome at this. Actually, if you did this, this might be a little bit better. Like
Mhm.
some stuff like that, like suggestions, I guess.
For sure, for sure. And so I find myself looking at it and saying, maybe I can't even give this person a compliment sandwich because they
And
can't take it, right? For whatever
yeah,
reason.
yeah, yeah.
And and I still make those trips, or yeah, I still trip on that. But it's a work in progress, right? Like anything.
Mm, yeah.
Um, um, some other things that might make you a toxic gamer. Um, Obviously, if you purposefully lose a team game, that's pretty bad, right?
Oh
If
yeah.
I'm gonna talk about this from like a league standpoint, right?
Hmm.
If someone and this comes from like trying to enact justice. If someone is very unkind, very toxic, a poor player, whatever negative behavior that's should be bannable, and you purposefully lose the game, you didn't really punish them. You punished three other players that had nothing to do with it,
Yeah.
right? And that kind of it's not a god complex, but I would call it a enforcer complex, where you believe that everyone who does a negative thing should be punished, and you almost gain satisfaction from handing them that punishment. That's that's one of the coping mechanisms that I don't recommend,
Hmm.
right? Too many people did evil unto you, and so you become the punisher, and you're like, well, everyone who does evil in my presence, they're gonna get punished.
Hmm.
You know, use the systems that are available to you, use the report feature, use whatever, and whether they have, whether the report feature works or not, um, I would say punishing them doesn't help you at all. Um,
Yeah.
and this a lot of this goes back to like the relationship aspect. If you I guarantee you, if you punish your partner every time they do something wrong, you won't have a long relationship,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
at least you won't have a happy one.
Yeah.
And it's a fine line. I think there's a way more gray areas than punishment and forgiveness.
Yeah.
There's a lot in between that you could probably do that would benefit yourself and whomever else is involved. But if you're punishing other players, probably shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
And it gets great, right? If someone on the opposing team member or on the opposing team starts being toxic and you camp their lane or you seek them out to give them a bad time, is that toxic? I don't know.
Yeah.
I
That. Yeah. That is a gray area. That's hard.
yeah,
Um,
right. You,
cause
you
I
sit up, you try a little harder. Mhm.
I was just gonna say like, cause I mean I feel like I've done that before. If
For
somebody's
sure.
done something to me, like that just they were doing it to be rude. Like it
Mhm.
definitely motivates me a little bit. um,
For sure, for sure. Like,
yeah.
I'm not a Tekken player, right?
Hmm.
But you can, or I would. I'll use Soul Calibur because I'm a little more educated on that.
Okay. Okay.
If someone is doing more juggling moves, I'm like, well, you know what? I guess you get to be juggled as well, right? Those
Yeah.
are unfun
Yeah.
to play.
Yeah. Or if
And
somebody's spamming something.
mhm.
Yeah.
and and like obviously it's a winning tactic, but
Hmm.
there's almost like an invisible agreement where we want to be fun to play against as well, right? It's a contract that we signed. Like, I'm going to play in a fun way. You're going to play in a fun way. And when
Yeah.
someone breaks that contract, you're like, okay, well, the gloves are off.
Yeah.
And I would say, even though that's probably not the most healthy behavior, I think that we're not monks.
Hmm.
And I would sign off, go ahead, it's a game at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the most unfun tactics are also usually the most optimal ones in a game,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And so, a change of strategy, I would say, is an acceptable level of toxicity.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And I
guess.
get, mhm.
Oh, I was just gonna say that's a good point. Like sometimes you do have to have a little bit. I guess
For sure.
I didn't think you could have like a healthy amount. That's a really interesting
Hmm.
thought.
Yeah, and like we're limited by the words that we use, right? Like,
Hmm.
what is toxic? I would define toxic as negative behavior
Hmm.
that affects others in a disproportionate way.
Okay.
That's what I would use.
Hmm.
Um, and yourself in a disproportionate way.
Okay.
So, an example could be if if I think someone is playing poor or unfairly in, let's say, Call of Duty,
Hmm.
and I hunt them down for the rest of the game, and I add them or whatever, and I try to play against them, and 3 hours of my day are lost bullying this guy,
Yeah.
assuming that I even win, right? God
Yeah.
forbid that I lose after my bullying attempt. Then, yeah, I'd be in shambles.
Yeah, that's true.
But if I successfully bully this person, I've spent 3 hours of my day inflicting negativity to this guy.
Hmm.
So I've disproportionately caused harm to myself by exhibiting a bad behavior for 3 hours.
Hmm.
I guess if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
And so, just the quick summary: it's toxicity, in my opinion, would be negative behavior towards others in a disproportionate way, or in a way that causes harm to self.
I never thought about that. So could you be toxic to yourself?
Yeah, so like spending 3 hours chasing down this guy, that would be me being toxic to myself.
That's nuts. Okay.
Yeah. I've never done it, But because fortunately I had some level of maturity throughout the Xbox Live era somehow, but I witnessed it in my little brother, who I think, and shame on me. I think at 9 years old he was playing on the Xbox Live lobbies,
Oh
and
wow.
so yeah, yeah, he internalized that pretty quick.
Jeez. Yeah, I'm glad I never had to go through that. Sounds miserable.
It's one of those like I don't know if it's miserable because they keep doing it, but there's definitely something that's bad in there.
Yeah. Just think some people just want to play a game and, they don't want to hear all that. And they just want to
Mhm.
relax. And
Yeah,
it stinks when an outlet of yours is gone.
I agree. I think that the extreme reaction to that is party social games and cooperative social games.
Hmm.
And the two that come to my mind immediately are Among Us and The Lethal Company,
Yeah.
where there's a social deduction element. Um, it's more. Are you familiar with the term emergent storytelling?
No.
So, emergent storytelling is something that good game designers are focusing on
Oh,
nowadays,
okay.
and it's storytelling that isn't from the game's narrative or the mechanics. It's your interaction with those mechanics that deal the story. So, for example, um, in Among Us, you never tell people, "Oh, I finished the puzzle very quickly."
Okay.
You tell them how you tricked people into thinking you were this guy or that guy or whatever it might be, but those aren't game mechanics, right?
Yeah.
It's stories that you're telling from something that happened in the game that aren't related to those mechanics.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And or Lethal Company. Are you familiar with Lethal Company?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, wonderful. And so no one ever talks about how, oh yeah, so in Lethal Company, I know the mechanic of how to do the bar hop over the pit so I don't fall in.
Hmm.
Nobody cares at how good you are with that, right?
Yeah.
Whereas, for example, in Soul Calibur, people might brag about being able to do a rapier combo or
Hmm.
whatever it might be.
Yeah.
I think the modern game really focuses on the emergent storytelling that really discourages toxicity and encourages social interaction, bringing it all the way back to the previous point, or social connections.
Hmm. Yeah. So what else do we have left on our list? Performance anxiety. I think that kind of ties
Ooh,
into the fighting game world too. Not to
I think
relate
so.
everything to that.
For sure. I think that the first time I competed, the first time I competed in a social area, right, where it was just people you don't know and at a venue, it it really puts into perspective like how sweat inducing it really is to do your best in front of others.
Yeah.
I think that gamers that do that become, I would say, more mentally fortified at the problems the world brings them. I think having everything you do scrutinized not only by the watchers, not only by the casters, but by your opponent who makes you pay for your mistakes is like a mental fortitude that really benefits really the rest of like all other aspects of your life.
Yeah. How do you build up that mental fortitude?
Oh,
Because I've been wondering that. Because in Tekken, you when you do make mistakes and when you're punished for mistakes, and you can beat yourself up a lot over
mhm,
doing stupid stuff or things
mhm,
that you think you should have learned. Um,
mhm.
how do you build up that mental fortitude so you're not hard on yourself as much as you should be, or too much?
So I think that stems like being hard on yourself is a shame drive,
Mm-hmm.
and this is not psychology advice, but it's friendly advice.
Okay.
I think that shame is an emotion you should do your absolute best to train out of your system. and it's a crutch used to help guide younger people that don't have ambition yet.
Okay.
And so I still have a little bit of shame here and there, but I've been making a lot of progress in making my inner voice more of a it's almost like a computer that says, hey, you did XYZ wrong, you did ABC right, do better if you want to do better, otherwise be happy with where you're stuck at. And it's not in a shameful way, but it's kind of giving you the options, right?
Yeah.
Either you get better or you try to become happier at where you are, or you're going to be sad. Those are the options. And usually get better is the option, but here's an example. I'm not very good at shooter games. I'm okay at Fortnite because I think the player base isn't that sweaty, and you can kill people that aren't looking at you. So that's my coping mechanism for. But I decided that I'm not going to play the aim trainers. I'm not going to be the 360 no scope guy, right?
Yeah.
I just have to be happy with. And obviously, you slowly get better regardless, right? But getting better takes conscious effort, and it's important to recognize that, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like the immaturity to want to get better without conscious effort. And so, to wrap this all together, to answer your question, I think that the only way to get over performance anxiety and be less hard on yourself is exposure to healthier gamers and exposure to the competitive atmosphere.
Okay. So
I-
how?
I-
Oh,
yeah.
sorry. I was just gonna ask you another question. I'm sorry.
Sure.
But how do you know if you're motivated by shame?
Oh,
I'm sorry.
no, that's fine. Because like human mind is incredibly complex. And
Yeah.
what if you're motivated 15% by shame, 20% by anger,
Yeah.
30? Yeah.
Yeah, that makes
Um,
sense. Yeah.
I would say, you know, if you're motivated by shame, if you get embarrassed a lot. I think
Yeah.
if embarrassment is a high driving factor for your improvement, there's a lot of shame motivation in there. Shame motivation is also tied to like pride motivation, which is a great energy source. So I don't know if I want to tell people to get rid of that because
Yeah.
I think the majority of successful people use that as their energy source. Um, but it's definitely a medicine that can turn into poison pretty quickly. Um, for me, I I for the most part got rid of my shame motivation before I did psychedelics.
Okay.
And I was unaware that I was primarily pride motivated until I did psychedelics. And that made me confront whether I wanted to get rid of it or not. And I decided no.
Yeah.
But I think for a lot of people, it turns into poison, and they don't notice.
Yeah.
And whether that is the case or whether there's a fourth buried issue, talk to your therapist about that, right? But um, I think that if people watching you fail um, hurts a lot,
Yeah.
the only solution I can give is do it more often if you want to overcome that, or don't do it at all if it hurts too much.
Yeah. Well, I
But
mean, that's a really good
yeah,
suggestion to just keep doing it until you just break out of it.
yeah, and obviously like it's easy when you're streaming to your friends and then they go, "Oh, well, you lost whatever. Who cares?" Right? Um, and I this is a very aggressive statement, but it's the only way I could explain it to a male friend. He goes bowling, and when he's in the bowling, when he goes to tournaments,
Okay.
and he does better at bowling when he's not competing, and we talk about why the reason is it doesn't matter, but when he says that he makes him sad when other people don't know that he's a good bowler. And so I tell him, like, do you care that the cockroach in your house thinks your house is messy? You don't care about that. It's the last thing on your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so why would you care if what a stranger thinks about you? And that all ties back to it's a coping mechanism, right? Because when you were in school, what someone thought about you would challenge your safety, right? It's almost like a relic of a mental wound that we suffered.
Yeah.
And so as adults, though, we have to heal that mental wound, unfortunately, if we want a happy, fulfilled life of caring what a stranger thinks. We're never going to see them again. It doesn't affect our social credit, whether they think we're cool or not, you know?
Yeah. Um, did we talk about the eye movement desensitization reprocessing?
We talked about it briefly, but
Yeah.
we can focus on it.
Okay,
So
cool.
EMDR, because for some reason I struggle to say the word desensitization.
Oh,
There we
me
go.
too.
Yeah.
I was practicing earlier.
Uh,
It was not good.
one of the most so I'll just go over it again real quick. The purpose of it is to help your brain unknot some of the mental wounds that you've sustained through rapid eye movement.
Okay.
And it's kind of like a so when you sleep, you go through the rapid eye movement process. That's when your brain is storing long-term and short-term memories and processing what has happened to you in the long and short term, right? That's
Mhm.
why you'll have dreams about something that happened to you 10 years ago, or a dream that something happened to you the morning of, right?
Mhm.
And so it's kind of like a conscious way of dealing with it more quickly. And if you go to therapy, I recommend talking to your therapist about it because it's a really interesting phenomenon that I believe helps you process whatever it is significantly quicker.
Okay.
It's a similar cheat code to psychedelics, obviously not as extreme,
Yeah.
but I would even say that it reduces the amount of sessions you need to overcome whatever it is by 20%. That's how effective I think it is.
Wow. Now I want to ask about
Yeah,
it.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
it it doesn't make sense. It when you go through it, you're like, this isn't helping. And then when you go home, you're like, I feel great. That's
Yeah.
crazy. And so essentially with the eye movement desensitization, you're essentially talking about your problems, looking at whatever the object is, whether it's flashing lights or the tip of a pen. And usually you need a person that's trained in order to do this. I'm
Okay.
personally not trained to do this.
Mhm.
Um, it's one of those where like it doesn't make sense to me, so it's even harder for me to learn how to do it for
Yeah.
somebody. But essentially, your brain is reaching into its pattern recognition circuits, so to speak,
Okay.
and forming new neural connections that help you be more okay with whatever you're dealing with. And being okay with something is the first steps towards healing, right? If your stomach hurts every time you think about it, you're definitely not going to heal anytime
Yeah.
soon.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. Like I hit a wall and
Hmm.
I'm trying to work through it, but it is hard and it's like
Yeah.
it's hard when you don't know if you're going to ever be able to like get through it. And you kind of want to have every tool available to you
Hmm.
to help
Hmm.
you get through it cuz if you're serious about getting through it, then
Hmm.
why wouldn't you do anything everything to get
For
there?
sure. And if it's any consolation, the human mind is extremely resilient, and if you
Mhm.
want to get over something, you will,
Yeah.
barring extreme mental disorders, right?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that makes me feel better.
Yeah, no, I mean, for sure. And like the fact that someone is in therapy, you can usually and actively trying, right?
Hmm.
You can assume they're going to get over or resolve whatever struggles or knots they have. I call so here's something that's funny. Um, ever since I got into psychedelics, I found it beneficial to visualize the problems or give them a metaphorical context.
Okay.
So, um, the mental wounds, right? I feel
Hmm.
like trauma doesn't have enough visual context, right? It's just trauma. It's your whole being. It's who you are.
Yeah.
You're traumatized,
Yeah.
and so to me, I didn't think that was um, positioned in a way that enabled healing from it,
Yeah.
right? So I started calling it mental wounds, right? Where it's
Yeah.
maybe it's festered or whatever, it needs to be cleaned out, and then a band-aid is thrown over it, and then it would start healing.
Hmm.
And that makes more sense to me.
Yeah, it does. It does because you do need to heal.
Hmm. I don't visually see it inside my head, but creating that metaphor is what I guess helped me on my journey to becoming a happier version of myself.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right, what do we have left on here?
Oh boy.
um, the skill development. Did we talk about that? I don't think we talked about that.
I don't think we did.
Okay.
Um, I think anyone who's so okay. I'm gonna split. I'm gonna create a divide right now. Competitive people. I'm gonna split them into two categories.
Okay.
There's people who are competitive, who enjoy the act of competing, and then there's sore losers who dislike losing and get upset when
Yeah.
they lose. And so sore losers, they get better in order to lose less, and that's usually like the 80% that we talk about,
Okay.
where they get upset when someone beats them. Maybe they fight somebody in the parking lot. I saw someone posted that earlier over Smash Bros because they were talking something, or whatever negative action comes out of it. But truly competitive people, the people that study the art of a character, that watch over their own games or think about what they did and how to improve. The act of getting good, the act of developing your skills, it's a skill itself. And and so when you're trying to get good at something, I think that the majority of people lack the knowledge that you can just get good at whatever you want to, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, you want to get good at something? Well, start doing it. Do it more, figure out where you did it wrong, do that less. And just for here's an example. I'm a sweaty gamer, as I mentioned.
Yeah.
I want to learn how to pilot a drone. Why? I don't know. It appeased me once.
Yeah.
So I sat down. I looked up how to get good at flying drones.
Hmm.
I'm not gonna buy a drone. I might just crash it right out. So I found drone simulators. I bought a drone controller that works on your computer, and now I have 22 hours in my drone simulator, and I'm confident that I could pilot a drone, right? And I think that that's a gamer mentality,
Yeah.
right? You look up a guide, like where else do you see that, right?
Yeah, that's true.
People looking up a guide, putting in the hours into uh, I forget what it's called in fighting games. Into what is it called?
I'm,
The
I,
fighting room, the the neutral room where you and a bot.
oh, you just like we call it like the lab or whatever.
Yeah, the lab,
Oh,
right?
okay.
You put some hours into the lab, and you come out better. It's basically the hyperbolic time chamber, right?
Yeah.
And anime fans might also get inspired by that. But honestly, it's an extremely gamer mentality to have, and I don't see that anywhere else.
Oops, sorry. I just noticed that there was a raid. Thank you so much, Candyman, for the raid. How are you? How was your stream? I'm sitting here with Marcel of Event Cruises. Actually, you probably should start talking about your cruise soon.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know it was so late.
Yeah, we've yapping for a while. Sorry
Yeah.
about that. So Event.Cruises is a company that I'm part owner of. We try to make cruises for nerds by nerds. I'm the biggest nerd you know. Event.Cruises is the URL. There's no .com or anything attached. Event.Cruises. We have a Dungeons and Dragons cruise and a anime slash gaming cruise that is happening in late August. For those that are interested. Other than that, we're looking to add more. We'll be doing a writer's cruise next year, as
Oh,
well as a Warhammer cruise next year.
oh, that sounds fun. I've never heard of like a writer's cruise before.
We're calling it authorship.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, we already bought the URL. It's author.ship.
That's pretty cool. So like, do they have like workshops or?
Yeah, so we'd be bringing in famous authors, workshops, world building panels, and everything you can dream of, ideally, under one air conditioned roof.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's, well, we haven't had the authorship, but I assume it'll be a blast, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And we're planning on bringing publishers as well, so that people can have like a pitching hour, so to speak, and have the publishers receive their material, and just create overall value. That's our thing. We're
Okay.
just trying to create value for people in the space that we're cruising for.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't hear a lot about many like theme cruises. Um, but yeah, they sound like fun.
For sure, we're experimenting with maybe doing a land event as well, but like the con space is it's so saturated for land
Yeah.
events that
Okay. All right. Well, was there anything else you wanted to talk about?
we could field questions that you've
Oh
been rated.
yeah. Oh, that's true. Did anybody have any questions in the chat for Marcel?
It could be uh, gaming related, mental health related. You can make fun of how I didn't become mature till like 25.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
seem to have a positive audience, though.
oh yeah, they're awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're
that's
all
right.
really sweet. Like that's what I'm saying. Like when I play Tekken, I have a really good community to play with, and they've
Mhm.
got good communities, and it's really nice to be a part of something like that.
Do you find that these like niche communities generally have a more positive vibe?
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, people are about like helping each other out and not putting everybody else down.
What do you think it is about the larger communities that end up fostering this kind of behavior less?
I think it's filling a hole for something that they can't fill
Hmm.
themselves.
Hmm.
I mean, my whole thing, and every like most people in the chat know about this. I talked about a lot about my mom, and
Hmm.
how she put a lot of her guilt and
Hmm.
on me and into her insecurities, and I've been carrying it around with me, and feeling guilty about stuff that isn't my fault, um,
Hmm.
and
It's hard.
it is hard. It's very hard, to not, my mom did it to me. Like, why not do that to somebody else? Because it's easier. Um, and that's kind of where I feel like that comes from. It's just people don't want to take that journey to figure it out. Because it is hard. It's not easy.
I think the hardest part about uh, personal enlightenment is reconnecting with people that from your past that are not on that journey.
Hmm.
Have you had to deal with that?
No, I mean,
Oh, okay.
I always thought of everybody already like on their own journey, but I guess if
Hmm.
you don't know that you're on a journey, you can't be on it. So I
For
think,
sure.
yeah, you just made me think of that. So, oh, I gotta rethink that too.
For sure, and it's one of those like it's very I'm gonna use the word invisible again. It's very invisible,
Hmm.
right? When
Yeah.
when you start thinking of how does me getting upset about this right now affect me next week,
Hmm.
and that kind of like micromanagement, I feel it's a learned skill, I
Yeah.
would say.
Yeah.
Other than Major Hurricane TV being hungry, like
Oh,
that.
he needs a chicken sandwich.
I could use
Hurricane,
it
huh?
like a McChicken.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we were joking once. We were playing Tekken together, and I like he kicked my ass, and so apparently I owed him a chicken sandwich out of nowhere,
Oh,
um,
okay.
and then his birthday was coming up, so we had a tournament where the prizes were chicken sandwiches. So the first top three who placed got chicken sandwiches. So it was a
How
fun
many chicken
tournament.
sandwiches did they get?
They're like $10 each for the on a gift card.
They should have had to eat all the chicken sandwiches on live on stream.
That would have been fun. That would have been fun.
It's like
Yeah.
a prize punishment.
Yeah. Yeah, that would have been pretty fun. But yeah. All right. I don't know what to talk about next.
How long do these podcasts usually go for?
Um. Well, I was thinking of streaming till 5, but well, 5 here anyway. But I could probably get
We,
going.
we could fill out another 30. I can talk
Yeah.
forever.
Okay.
You let me know.
Yeah. Yeah, we can keep going. What do you think, chat? Do you guys want to keep going? What are we gonna talk about? Not to put you on the spot.
No worries. Um, so while so obviously trying to run, so our convention, our event at Cruises. Don't be fooled by the art, the presentation, and all of the I want to say the theatrics. We're 4 people. That's the whole company.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's rough. There's no volunteers. It's just us.
Yeah. So
And
what made you want to get into the this event planning field, and why on cruises?
so we'll go a little bit into the backstory. So I failed my first company when I was like 22.
Okay.
It was a gaming hookah lounge.
That
And
sounds pretty cool.
thank you. No one else thought that.
Oh
And so,
no! Oh no!
so it failed. We tried to cater to both groups too much.
Okay.
The gamers, they and this was before the era of 10 years ago. This is before the era where people thought it was acceptable to pay to cohabitate a gaming space, right?
Okay.
Tell them, hey, there's a $5 play fee. They're like, ew, I could just play at home. Like, brother, man, you can scream your head off here. You probably can't do that at home.
No, that's true.
Yeah, and so the hookah was the thing that was primarily making us money, but we didn't cater to them enough. And then and we were losing money every month, and it all came to a combination of we're not making enough money, we're losing money, and then Nintendo sent us a cease and desist order because we had Nintendo characters smoking hookah painted on the walls.
Oh no!
And I assume somebody reported us to Nintendo because we have a very strict policy of like no creeping, no misbehaving yourself, no berating other patrons, and so we've kicked out a few people, and that's fine. That's what happens when you run a business.
Yeah.
And I assume one said, you know what, here you go. And
oh, that sucks.
once we got that, we were going downhill anyways. If anything, it was a blessing that we
Yeah.
didn't lose more money.
Mhm.
We decided to cut it there, cut our losses.
Yeah.
So anyways, me, jaded and edgy, a friend comes and says, hey, I have an idea. Let's do a convention. I go, that's dumb. And he says, on a boat. I'm like, that's dumber. And he says, I'm going to do it. And so then I'm like, fuck it. And so that combination of behavior led us to do our first GakuCon, which is Gaku stands for gaming, anime, comics, and unmentionables.
Oh.
And yeah, and so it's a little tongue-in-cheek
Yeah.
convention. And our first event, we went extremely negative, and I think it's a testament to our friendship that we didn't kill each other. And then the second event went even, and so now we saw the light, right?
Yeah.
And this whole time we're working full-time jobs, right? And just doing this on the side. And that was, I think, 7 years ago now. That
Wow.
we've been it's been quite the journey, and we're finally making an amount of money that we can consider pivoting out of our day jobs.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah it's been quite the journey, but a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of trying. So here's an example. We spend less money every year. The first year we brought in, I don't know if you know who Greg Street is.
No.
He's like the mastermind behind like World of Warcraft, League
Oh,
of Legends.
okay. Oh, okay.
Just his name on LinkedIn, I think, is Ghostcrawler. But we brought him as a special guest, and pardon my language, no one gave a fuck that we brought him. They all talked about the Beyblade tournament that we had impromptu on the boat. That was everyone's emergent storytelling, right? It wasn't the superstar content guy. It was what they got to do. And so
Wow.
we pivoted it towards, there's game tournaments, there's manga,
Mm-hmm.
there's a watch together panel where we just have anime playing that you can come and sit down. Um, and we hold, tournaments. I call it you don't know tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically, I grab games that are multiplayer on Steam that have under 100 reviews,
Yeah.
and that's the tournament for the game.
Oh, okay.
So it's you can't be sweaty. And obviously, if you found it, congrats, you get to win that one. But
Mm-hmm.
it's the least sweaty tournament possible.
I
And then
like
we have,
that.
yeah,
That's a cool
uh,
idea.
and then we have the sweaty tournaments, right? We have the Rocket League, the Smash Bros, the Tekken, the Mortal Kombat
Mm-hmm.
as well, just to cater to everybody. Right? We're just four guys trying to not work a full-time job, making something for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds good. Sounds like a plan. It sounds. I mean, I really like themed things, and
Mhm.
I never thought of going on a themed cruise. I think the first themed cruise I've heard of was like the Star Trek one, and that one seems
Yeah,
pretty fun. Um,
we were considering uh, um, what's it called? We were considering of catering to the sci-fi um, genre and making a cruise called Trek Wars Cruise,
okay.
where it's Star Wars and Star Trek. But we're like, maybe the audience won't mesh well together.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I think Trek Wars is a great name for a cruise, but
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
we're heavily in consideration. We have a pretty big emailing list that we're like testing with, like, hey, how would you feel about this cruise? And that's why authorship came to a head.
Okay. Yeah, that one sounds really cool.
Hmm.
Um,
What about you? What are your plans for this stream? What's your next step?
well, actually, I did want to talk to everybody about since I am burnt out, I'm taking a break. I had to cut the streams from the rest of the month. My last stream's tomorrow, so I'm going to take a break until July, and I'll be back to like harass people at Evo for interviews. But yeah, I need to take a break. Um, it was a busy month already, and then just going through what I'm going through at therapy kind of pushed me over the edge a little bit. Um, so yeah, but in that time, I'm gonna be working on like a new streaming space. I'm super excited about it. So I'm really looking forward to that. I'll still be hanging out in people's streams, saying hi and stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much what's going on with me. Season 3 of the podcast is almost done. We got 2 more weeks left, this week
Do
and
you use
next week.
do you use like a distribution platform for the cruise for the stream for the podcast?
Yeah, I use Spotify. I mean, it's pretty much on like everything.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because I keep getting ads. I don't know too much about podcasts. You're the expert. But I keep
Oh.
getting ads for like this service that shoots it out to 11 platforms for you.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I just put it like on the RSS feed of like just all
Mm.
these websites, and so it just kind of does it for me.
Oh, even better.
Yeah.
Probably way cheaper as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, I don't pay for it. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, too broke for that. I don't make any money like that.
Our attendees, one of our internal mottos is we hope to make as much money as our attendees one day. Because
Oh, I can see that. Yeah.
running a cruise convention, whatever you think it pays, remove a zero because it's a rough life
Yeah.
trying to live your dreams. I'm sure you know that, right? Running podcasts.
Mm-hmm. Just a lot of time. A lot
Yeah.
of time, like very time consuming.
Yeah, like when you're running your own business, if you convert your hours to dollars, like your hour to dollar ratio, it's
Mm-hmm.
lower than minimum wage with how much time you just put into it. You know what I mean? Maybe not you, but for us, it's 100% that.
Yeah. I mean, it like we were talking about before is the creating boundaries between work and like play,
Hmm.
and it's kind of hard to tell. It's like, am I taking a break right now? It doesn't feel like it, but I'm not sure. I don't know what's going on. And then you do run at 100, but then you burn out and you just can't physically do anymore.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I
I
think
mean, that's where I'm at right now.
a full month off though, that's or a month and a half, right?
Yeah.
That's hardcore. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, because of the therapy too. It's like every week there's something new coming up,
mm-hmm.
and I think it will give me time to deal with that. And I need to like spring clean my house. Like we have
Okay.
to get so much stuff to get rid of. Like there's so much to do that I've been neglecting. Like I need to take the time to do it.
No, I understand completely.
Yeah.
I'm definitely from an all or nothing type of type of way.
Hmm.
My office is, I'm gonna use the word, it's definitely a mess because the only thing that I use on Zoom calls is behind my desk.
Okay.
And when I'm working like 50-hour weeks, it just falls to the wayside. So I hear you completely.
Hmm. Yeah. But I think that's it for me.
Yeah, that's it for me as well.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming in today. I had a lot of fun. Oh, hey, Family Asian. Thank you so much for coming in. We are gonna raid out right now. I think since we've been talking about cozy games, the Wardeness is playing Stardew Valley right now.
A safe choice. Safe
Yeah,
choice.
so that might be fun. So let's give her a visit. But yeah, thank you so much for coming in again and talking. And what did you think about your podcast episode?
Pretty good.
Yeah,
I think that maybe I wasn't as prepared as I thought I was, but
I thought you did awesome.
thanks. But I mean, I think it was still good nonetheless. I hope that people came out with nuggets of wisdom out of it from the uh, limited experience that I do have in the therapy field, as well as like the personal opinions that I have of the therapy field as well. Hope it wasn't too hot of the takes.
No, your takes were fine. Yeah, your takes are fine. Yeah, it
Okay,
was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for spending the time and coming in and talking to us.
for sure. Tune in next time for the FGC
Yeah,
critique
yeah, we got to do
cast.
the FGC edition.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be fun. All right, you guys, take care. Let's head over to the Ward Nest.